Beautiful, bro. Well, welcome back after having the bub, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, the show's
You're a
going
dad.
on. The show's going on without me being around for a little bit. But yeah, being a dad, it's what everybody told me it was going to be. Just the most amazing thing that you'll ever experience, whilst also being the hardest thing that you'll ever experience.
Yeah, wow. How are you actually finding it? Like the normal stuff, like the feeling, like the change in yourself. What can you say?
Look, I'm just going with the flow at the moment. Like, he's still so young, and, you know, some of the challenges that I face is like, you know, the lack of sleep, the disrupted sleep, as everybody knows, when you become a parent, you know, you just don't get a good night's sleep anymore. So that's been the toughest thing, and also not being able to provide for him too much, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I can't breastfeed, so that's been really challenging. So like, you want to help and you want to be a supportive husband and father, but like, there's certain things that we just can't do. So I'm just trying to like help out around the house, clean the house, make good food, like taking him when he's not feeding and giving Tay a little bit of a break and stuff like that. And we're just trying to work as a team. Like, she focuses on what she can do, being a mum, and I focus on what I can do being a dad. But now I'm back to, you know, my 4 days per week of work, and you know, this is my first week, so it's a little bit, you know, different in that aspect. Just
Back to the holiday, 4 days a week.
Yeah, well, that's right. I said that to Tay on Monday and Tuesday night. I'm like, Tay, like, it's actually easier to get away.
Way more chill, man, than a baby.
It's just non-stop. But yeah, grateful to be a dad, and grateful to have him healthy, happy. Little Tanner is his name, Tanah.
Tanner, no, he's so beautiful, man. And like, even seeing him like 1 week and then the next, like the changes are insane.
It's so quickly, hey? Like, everyone says they grow so fast, so savor every moment that you get. But like, yeah, it's so real how quickly they grow. Like, he's put on 1 kilo in like less than a month, and it's just like...
He's on the ultimate bulk shake.
He's on the ultimate bulk shake. Booby milk.
It's awesome. Well, I'm like excited, to be honest with you, to talk about this one, because this is important. Like, we talk about a lot of data, we talk a lot about markets, about undervalued areas, we talk about history, but you know, there's a whole lot of reasons that we invest in property that has nothing to do with what it physically is and what it can do for us. And so I suppose it's a good segue into like my first question for you, which is like, why property at a fundamental level? Like, when you sort of jotted down a few ideas before we started, like what came to mind?
The first thing that came to mind for me as to why I like to invest in property was, it's just what everybody wants. I think you ask any person on this planet, no matter where they're from, everybody wants to own some land. Everybody wants to provide their family, their loved ones, with a safe place to live.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a reality. Like, you know, the biggest superpowers, governments, businesses, and all the way down to the individual want to own real estate. And it's just recognizing that it is the #1 asset in the world. It is the only finite asset that we truly have, because God's not making any more land for us.
There's no more land.
Obviously, we've got a lot to potentially develop, but like, most people just want to be living in these specific locations. So to me, it really comes down to the fact that it is the #1 asset that everybody wants on this planet. And you know, I love the tangible nature of it as well, and we'll get into a few more stories. But at the end of the day, the fundamental root level why I love investing in property is because it is such a desirable asset, no matter who you talk to. Because, you know, I got friends that are like right into trading the stock market, right into trading the crypto market. I got friends that are really successful business owners. You know, everybody's got their different interests and hobbies and things that they're good at, but you ask every single one of those people what they truly want, and they're all reinvesting whatever money they make from their job, from their businesses, from their investments into the land. So it's just like, everybody's trying to capture their own piece of land. So that's me personally, and I guess that's like a bit of a different answer to what you would maybe say for why you invest in property.
Yeah, like I think the statistical, like, I've been investing now for pretty much 15 years, and you know, there was an article recently by Simon Presley where he said, you know, Australian real estate, the top performing asset in the world in the last 50 years. And I think a person that had purchased property averaged 8.2% a year plus the cash flow in the last 50 years, which is just insane. And then there's not a successful person that I've ever read a book about, listened to a podcast about, a YouTube video or talked to that doesn't have some share of their wealth allocation in property. So the biggest super funds in the world have it, the biggest sports people, the biggest actors, the biggest businesses, the biggest business people.
Religions.
The religions do as well, like all the best locations in the world owned by the Catholic Church and the Christians basically. And it's always been that way because there's only, there's a finite world, but then within that world, there's only one Sydney. And in Sydney, there's only a certain number of waterfront properties that can be sold at any point in time. And obviously we develop further and further and further. And I've been to some big cities where obviously the sky really is the limit. But from that perspective, it's just safe. And I think for me, when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it immediately made sense. Like, I know that there's incredible wealth to be made through stocks, crypto, currency, through business, through other passive assets of every kind. But for me personally, I just immediately got it. It felt comfortable. Like, it really isn't rocket science. It's super, super simple. It's very straightforward. There's a series of like processes and steps that you can follow to become a great investor. And if you follow them and don't allow the emotion or like what's going on right now to sort of affect you like the blowing of the wind, like it can be super, super, super consistent.
But then you can also have the ability to kind of get a little bit of bit emotional about it as well, which I kind of like that, looking at where the good schools are, like where the good beaches are, where the good national parks are, like, and then you think of like an interior perspective as well, like some of the cool things that you and Lisa and Crystal have done with your investments over the years. Like, you can really get involved and like make something like really average into something just so beautiful and amazing as well. So you get that control of being able to like do really unique, interesting, cool things. So it's a creative outlet sometimes.
Completely. Like, for me, when I was writing some stuff down, I definitely didn't write like statistically it's done well. I meant like, for me, it is fun and it is simple and I understand it. And I actually, it's weird to say, but I love investing. Like, I love investing in property. I love finding a piece of land years ago, a few days before Christmas, that had been sitting on the market for 9 months, calling the agent and him saying they're finally ready to sell, and they discount it like 150K the day before Chrissy, and then cutting that in two and selling one and building like a cool 4-bedroom house and a 2-bedroom granny flat. Like, I loved going to Mooloolaba when Mooloolaba was dirt cheap and like a monster piece of land and then building a house and a granny flat with some pools and chucking solar on and then trying to like furnish it and put like little things on, like free electricity, free internet. And instead of getting $300 or $400 a week in rent for like the granny flat, I'm getting $700 a week and going, well, that works. And then Airbnb stuff and renovating and knocking down and rebuilding and like all of those things that you can go through. And then recognizing later after doing all that stuff that, hey, I don't actually want to do all that stuff now. Like, the creative side in my life is coming from something completely different. What I really want from property is secure long-term growth. I want to time markets well, and I want to buy things that give my family cash flow outside of my day job for the rest of my life and set up future generations. And so it's like been a full cycle, I suppose, for me personally. Like,
it starts there, right? Like
it starts there.
It starts with you invest in real estate for a future outcome.
Without a doubt.
But then as you get stuck into it and you gain more experience and you have some wins, you have some losses, you do some cool projects, you spend too much money on some average projects, whatever it might be, you start to shift into a different type of investor. But then at the end of the day, it always comes back and now you're starting to get that positive reinforcement as well.
You said something in the office earlier this week, and it was like this idea of stacking proof that it's working. That like the vision that we all have is like, you're basically standing here and you're looking towards where you could be and you're going, I don't know necessarily how or why this is going to work out, but I have faith or trust that it will. And then learning about markets and then suburbs and then streets and property types and building a team around you and filling in all those holes. And then over time, it's like, wow, I'm looking back now. And like, for example, your decision to buy that property back when like 19, and then to sell it recently, it's like, I just stacked proof that like, if I just buy it and do nothing, I can make 200, 300, 400 grand without even going to work. And that's crazy.
It was super scary as well. And I think a lot of people have that fear of failure. You know, they hear of other people doing it, but maybe they don't have that belief that they can do it as well. And, you know, it begun like that for me for those first couple of properties. Like, I was fearful of parting ways with that cash that I'd worked so hard to save up. I had fear of going into debt. I had fear of sustaining the holding costs and the maintenance required with those properties. So there's always these fears, but you've got to just surround yourself with a great team of advisors and like air those thoughts so you can make better decisions. But, you know, the stacking proof, the stacking evidence is like a Hormozy thing, and it's just like, you know, become the person that you want to become. And it's like, me and Tay, we worked out, and, you know, this is to put a bit of a story out there for everyone as to why you should invest in property. For us, we've probably spent about $350,000 cash on deposits and stamp duty and agent fees for houses. Now, that's not including like the holding costs and things like that.
Yeah,
that's
just
the
upfront
entry costs. And
equity and cash?
Yeah, equity and cash. Actually, we've never used equity to buy. We've always only used cash.
Yeah.
That was something that you taught me that I thought was a good way to do it if I could. I've used equity to renovate and add value, but I haven't used it to buy. So that allowed us to buy 4 houses over 3 years, essentially. And then in selling this one property, we essentially got back like 75% of that cash that we put down.
Of total cash from one property?
From one property, but we got to keep 3.
Yeah.
So bought 4, spent about $350,000 on them plus holding costs. Then we've sold 1, kept 3, and got the majority of our money back as well. And that was probably the best feeling. Like I said, up until this point, the best feeling was that financial peace, the realization that I've got what I need to be financially independent in the future.
Yeah.
But then seeing that cash hit the bank account, I'll tell you what,
that's
I'm
real.
I try not to get too attached to the money and things like that. But at the end of the day, like when you see your bank account go up by that amount, it's just like, oh, it works.
Especially after so many years of delaying the gratification, like we both have, and so many people listening to this have as well. Like it's tricky to constantly be like seeing the chocolate in front of you and not being able to eat it. Like, and it's nice to get a little bit of that feedback of like, hey, it's working out and everything is going to be okay. And I don't have to stress so much on my future anymore, because really, like we're always saying to clients, like investing is really just a way to get to the lifestyle and the choices and the freedom that you really want. And property, the reason I do property is because of leverage, right? So like if I have $100,000 now and I get 7% in stocks next year, then I made 7K. If I put 100 grand into a property worth 500 grand and get 7% next year, I made 35K. So effectively I'm $28,000 better off in the first year alone.
And you add compound growth onto that.
Long term, like the difference in net position as a younger person in their 20s, 30s, 40s that has 20, 30 years to invest is insane. I
recently sat down with a financial advisor from Sydney, Alex, amazing guy, and you know, similar sort of lifestyle, like family man, you know, not in it to get rich, in it for the lifestyle and the choices. And like he sort of forecasted where Taylor and I will be by, I think it was 63 retirement age.
That's cool.
With just putting 11.5% of our income into our super fund. And it was a beautiful number, don't get me wrong. But then he actually showed me an example of, hey, once we're in a financial position to do so, if we were to actually put that money into like a property instead of just into a managed fund, the difference when we retire was going to be over $500,000 better off.
Wow.
And, you know, just seeing that was so wild, like, because I've always thought that would be just a bit of a backup having that super there. But now he's changed my mindset, and it's like far out. Like, you know, property just outperforms managed funds every single time based on the sort of data points that he was putting in there. It was just mind-blowing.
That's crazy, man. It sounds like a fun first year.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just going to spray this whole 500k in year one of retirement and have an absolute ball.
Exactly, eh?
Take your brother on the road, do whatever you need to do.
Let's see, eh? Let's see.
But yeah, I suppose, like, you know, thinking a little bit about why property for me as well, outside of the long-term history. So when we looked at that long-term history, 8.2% a year for 50 years, according to Simon Presley. When we looked at John Lindeman's book, 11% a year for the last 100 years is what it had averaged. And then there's just so many examples that everybody has of like their grandma, their great-grandma, their auntie, their uncle, their mum, dad, their brother, sister buying a property in Australia in a major metro market or a regional market and it working out. Like, I don't think the why property anymore has to come from a purely numbers, historical, and what it really does perspective, because we all get that it works. Like, there's just so much social proof of that idea now in every country in the world, even Japan, where they just don't want assets to grow basically so that people are productive in the economy. Like, they still have grown in value when an Olympics rolls around and stuff. So for me, property comes back to like choices. And it really comes back to something that I heard when I was about 24, 25 living in Sydney. I went and saw, it's like the Ultimate Success webinar or seminar. It was like a 3-day thing, and I went with 2 of my best mates at the time, and we saw Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, Donald Trump in like 3 days. And it was insane. And like, to see the differences of these people, the worst thing is like, I missed Trump because I was super hungover from like getting on the piss the night before. And I had no idea at the time that he was going to be like a president. And I would, you know, I'm not a fan at all. It doesn't matter at all now. But it would have been pretty cool to see, like, it's like an Obama. It'd be nice to see him,
Of course, you know, he's a pretty influential person to say the least.
Yeah, and so Tony said something there, and this other dude that was just another punter there said something as well. And it's like, you want to create a life where you can do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with who you want to do it with, as often as you feel like doing it. And it was just this idea of like ultimate choices. And he's like, there's really a decision point like there is in everything. And it's like, you can go the traditional route of like working forever and ending up financially okay with whatever you've got in your pension fund until you get on the pension or your super fund. Or you can slowly invest in high quality assets. And this is when Tony was really realizing that mindset, physical health wasn't enough. And he was really turning to like the wealth stuff, because he's like, if I can teach a whole generation of people to be financially free, they can give more to other people, they can help more, and they can really follow their bliss. And it was just such a big thing to hear at 24, 25 when I was really ready to hear it. It's like, I said at that age that by 40 I wanted to be in this position that I'm in now. And that position was doing work I love, being able to help people that I care about, doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it with. And there's a limit, like, because I don't, you know, I'm not balling or anything. Like, I don't want to, like, I can't go on a private jet or something like that. And I've got no desire to go first class or something like that. But I want to, like yesterday, last night, you're at dinner and you're like, you know, I'm going to Fiji. Does anyone want to come? And I don't want to be sitting there and going, I can't come. So it's like, well, the choice to come now comes back to like, what else do we have going on? And it has nothing to do with the financial side, because it's like, okay, like my properties will pay for that trip anyway.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the lifestyle thing's been really important for me. Like, what about you? Like, what other things stack up for you?
I want to change the tune a little bit, just because I agree with everything that you've just said, and, you know, I'm not going to repeat the same things, but a different idea is like to look at the sort of numbers of it as well. Like, when I look at real estate, the historic capital growth rates have always beaten inflation and almost kept up with the stock market.
Yeah, even in the 80s, like when the interest rates were 18%, you look at Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, they were doing 19 to 21% in those years as well. Like, they averaged above that in crazy inflation at the time.
So it helps me hedge against future inflation. So it means that my properties are going to go up at a faster rate than inflation. So then I'm parking my cash in the right asset.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, rents also have historically kept up with inflation at an average of 2.5% to 3% per year. So, and if we look at the last few years, we've had higher inflation rates and we've had much higher rental growth rates as well. So when I sit my money in a bank account, over time that money becomes worth less. And if I've got it in, say, like a term deposit, that 4 or 5% that I might be getting from there is going to become worth less over time. Whereas in real estate, it's going to become worth more over time because it's beating inflation. And that rental income, if that eventually, which I hope, becomes my passive income, there's no passive income, but you know what I mean? Like, it's my passive income that will also keep up with inflation. So I just see this as a safe hedge against, whatever is to come in the future.
Yeah. Can I just quickly talk to the numbers on that? So let's look at the last 2 years for an example. So I know many people at retirement age that are like, well, the safest thing I can do at the moment, and I fully get it, and I'm not a financial advisor, this is certainly not advice, but just looking at an apple versus an apple, is to put my money in the bank. How many people do we know that are older that are just doing that? And it's like, okay, you got 5% on $1 million last year, and you got 6% on that $1 million this year. So you've made great money. You've made 11% on $1 million, which is over 100K. But had that money been in, let's say the Brisbane property market, that's done 16% this year and 12% last year or whatever it's done, plus rents have gone up in the city by 30% in the last 2 years as well. You're exponentially better off in the same market. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should be in property, and the cash flow that comes off $1 million property isn't great. Sometimes the net cash flow position, but when you're in a stage of life where growth is part of the equation, property is unbeatable.
Exactly. And you didn't even inflation adjust that cash on cash return as well. Over those last 2 years, if they're getting 5-6%, inflation's been 3 to 5%. So they're really only making 1 to 2% on that money.
Yeah.
So you got to always factor in that inflation adjustment as well. The next thing is something I saw on Instagram Reels. There's this really great mortgage broker that puts out some incredible advice, and it's the idea of freezing your cash in time. Mm-hmm. And this is more so for younger investors, definitely not those folks that are getting towards retirement age, but for people, maybe in their 20s, 30s or 40s that have a longer term plan. It's like when you get in debt. So an example of this, I bought a house, let's say I bought a house in Logan, which I did back in 2021.
South Brisbane.
South Brisbane. I acquired $440,000 worth of debt when I bought that property. Now, I bought that property for $480,000, whatever it was. It's currently worth about $750,000. That debt that I've got is still $440,000 today.
This.
Even inflation has gone up, my cash becomes worth less, but that debt is frozen in time today whenever I acquire it. So I'm paying, so as my life goes on, my assets are going to go up in price, my rent is going to go up in price, my wage is going to go up with inflation, or higher if I'm a good employee. But that debt stays at 2021 prices. So, that debt had of it been exposed to inflation over the last 3 years, because we're now in 2024, it would be a lot higher than what it currently is. So I obviously butchered that, and we need to get Clay on again to talk about this idea of freezing your debt in time, but you understand where I'm coming from into why that's important.
One of the reasons personally, again, this isn't advice for anyone, but the advice I was given by my accountant was I've been interest only for a long time, and the reason being is we talked about freezing debt 8 to 10 years ago, and he's pay off the debt on these properties with future earnings. Let's say that in 2010, my income was nothing, $55K a year or something like that.
Probably less.
And I had $320,000 worth of debt, and I froze that debt at $320,000, and by 2020, my debt position was still 320, but my income was now 200K per year. Like all of a sudden my ability relative to the debt position to pay off that money. And then you go from 2020 to 2024 that we're in at the time of recording this, and it's like the income might be at 300K per year, but the debt's still frozen in time. It's a big idea that people understand what you said before, like inflation adjusted returns, always think about. And it's like, if you're getting great advice from your accountant like that, like I didn't know what he was talking about. And this property mortgage broker person sounds like they've explained it a lot better than he has to me, or I have again.
And how I have to you. So apologies for that.
But there's so many advanced conversations and ideas that you can, with the right people around you, speed up your journey. Like I say this to people all the time. Like I do believe that, like, you know, you and I bought 22 properties combined for ourselves in 15 years, and 1,050 for other people worth over $500 million. It's like, you would think that like if anyone's wired just normally, then they'd learn something from those experiences. But if you're OCD like we both are on learning, and like not just like studying history, but like bettering yourself every single day by 1%, like there's things that you can learn, you know what I mean? And it's like I say to
inevitable.
people without, and I'm not saying this in an ego way, but I'm like, I believe I can save anybody 15 years of their working life
100%.
through just not fucking making the same mistakes that I have.
Exactly.
Let alone like employing the more advanced things that we're doing now.
You know, you spend 10,000 hours, which, you know, I'd be getting close, if not above that now.
You're way above it.
You'd be close to 20,000, I'd say, by now. And it's like, you do anything that consistently, you're going to become an expert at it. Like, it's just inevitable, especially if you put focused attention to it. And I think that is the caveat to getting better at anything in life, is like, you can't just do something and hope that you're going to get better at it. Like, I love surfing and I go surfing. There's so many social surfers in the water that are just out there for the chat. They're just out there to have a good time, and that's cool. Each to their own. But for me, I'm like, in every area of my life, and this isn't because I feel like I need to, but it's just who I am as a person. I want to get better. Like, I'm watching the better surfers and what they're doing. I'm talking to those better surfers and asking them how I can improve my technique. And you know, if you're putting focused energy towards anything, the byproduct is getting better.
Yeah, I love that, man. I should be putting some more time into surfing better.
But I reckon I've surfed all of about 3 hours over the last month, and I can feel it. But you know, it is what it is. But I'd love to share a bit of a story about myself as well, as to why I love property. And like, in the beginning, for me, it was quite overwhelming and daunting and nerve-wracking and all of those uncomfortable emotions you experience when doing anything complex.
And you didn't find, this is important, like I found property because it was passion-driven. Like I read a book, I had nobody in my life that had ever done it, and I was like, this makes sense. And then when I started to learn, it's like I couldn't think about anything else for a period of time. Like I was obsessed with it. You came from, and this is really important, like you came from a place where it's like, I kind of like dragged you into the world. It was not on my radar. You're finishing uni, you're at a very different stage of life like I was when I started too. And it was like, I remember you saying like, I'm not sure about this at all, but I'm happy to give it 6 months and I'll see. And even at the end of a year, it was like, I'm learning what I'm learning, but it's like, it can grow into a passion as well once you start to see the benefit of what it can do for you.
Scott Galloway explains this so well. He's just been on a bit of a podcast run. He was on Chris Williamson, he was on Doak, and you know, he's a really successful entrepreneur business person in the United States. He's got some interesting philosophies that I don't align with, but he's got some interesting philosophies that I do align with. And one of those was about passions. There's this idea in the world right now that you must follow your passions. You know, if you're an artist, you've got to fulfill your passion as an artist. Maybe not.
Start and find passion from getting great at something.
That's exactly what he goes into say, is like, you will become passionate about something that you become good at. So he says, instead of following your passion, you know, find something that's desired in the world. So like he says, find an industry that has a 90% hire rate and then become one of the top 10% of people that work in that industry. It's like, over time, if you become the top 10, you become good at it. You have to become good at it if you're in the top 10% of any industry.
And then you get rewarded for that.
You get rewarded for it, and then that reward gives you more choices, gives you more freedom, allows you to naturally become passionate about it, which I think is so cool. And that's what's happened about property with me. Like, I had a plumber around doing some renovations the other day, and he was just asking me some questions, and he's like, damn, you love this stuff, don't you? And I'm like, I proper do. Like, I love this stuff now. And it didn't start like that, but it's become that.
And this is the thing, this is important too. Like, and sorry to cut the story out.
Cool.
Like, I know there's more to it, but it starts with learning something and then over time becoming good at something. But it's like, I don't walk into a house and go, man, I'm obsessed with these four walls and a roof. I do like that stuff too, because like we love renovating and building and all that. But what I'm passionate about now that I'm further down the line is like rocking up to my kids' school stuff.
Hell yeah.
Picking them up, being home when they get home from school, taking their school holidays off with them. Like, I'm passionate about the lifestyle it gives, and I'm passionate about helping people. And one of the ways that you can help people is just being there and listening and saying nothing. But the more skills you have and the more money you have, I believe the more you have to give. Like, it's cool when your friend's like super interested in health and got that wired, but it's like, well, I'm not going through a health thing right now. I've like got that sorted. It's like I'm actually really struggling mentally, or I'm looking to start this business, or I'm looking to like invest, or it's just even like the benefit of being that person in your world. Like, I've been hearing this a lot at the moment from some people I'm listening to online, and it's like, be the person in your family line that completely breaks the way that family line was going. Like, become that person in your social circle that unconsciously changes the trajectory of everyone else for the better, not for the worse. Like, because we're both interested in health, because we're obsessed with only one thing. It's like when you focus on one thing, like Dennis Waitley, the US Olympic psychologist for 23 years, like wrote an incredible book about winning. It's like when you become obsessed with one thing for 15 years, then the world will, like, we're talking about shit here that's got nothing to do with property, but it's like, I have suffered mentally, like I have broken relationships on this journey, like I have hurt my family on this journey, but I've stayed in the mud and like I've let the dust settle, and popping out enables the people that are listening to this and ourselves to like be a key person of influence in our communities and just pull the whole bunch of next people up, like Sunshine Coast Care, like our friends, like our family members. Like, how many family members and friends have we made hundreds of thousands of dollars for now by just like them coming in and going, how? And us going, this is what I would buy. And that's 3, 4, 5 years, you know what I mean?
It's such a beautiful thing to do, and like, I couldn't be more grateful to be in this position to be able to do it. And like the fact that we've got an audience that, you know, wants to hear this sort of stuff, and the amazing clients that we get to catch up with.
Maybe they don't. Maybe we'll be lit up in the comments in a minute.
They'll be like, shut up, boys, shut up. Yeah,
this is what I'm into. I'm speaking to myself.
And we do this for ourselves as well. But to come back to what it's become, so like, it didn't start as a passion for me. I was not knowledgeable about property at all. I'd never thought about it. It had never been on my radar. I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was about as far as it went.
Yeah.
But now it's become something that I really love. And this might sound a little bit arrogant, but I'll get into the details in a bit. But like, property has now become a game for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a game that I'm quite good at. And if you become good at a game, you want to continue doing that for the rest of your life. So there's so many fun parts about property that, like, I know if I put in the work, I'm going to get an outcome. So input, output. I get that positive reinforcement. But like,
I love that.
Identifying the right market and not just jumping on the bandwagon of what everybody else is doing, and like,
so actually the opposite of what everyone's doing is how you win.
Picking the eyes out of it and like following the data, and then going, okay, well, I've got the right market now. There's 420 suburbs in Brisbane. Which one should I invest in? And then diving into the data of the suburbs and comparing one to the other, and going for a drive, and then, you know, talking to some locals and getting a really good understanding of it. Like,
Thornside is the answer. By the way. It's the most
Don't say
statistically
that.
under suburb.
Don't say that. I went 2 in Margate, not 1 in Margate and 1 in
No,
Thornside.
I mean when you bought Margate, man, that was like looking better than Thornside is now.
But you get the suburb, and then you look in the suburb, and you've got to find the right property. You look on realestate.com. There's 20 plus properties in the suburb. You're like, which one of these 20 should I go for? And then you start inspecting the proproperties, and you're getting a little bit more of a better understanding. You drive through one street and you're like, oh, this feels nice. We're elevated. There's a nice breeze. There's some trees here. It looks like most people look after their properties. You drive through another, oh, this is a main road. There's lots of traffic lights. You know, it's really busy. There's a couple of junkies walking down the street. Like, you get a bit of a feel for the suburb and the properties within those suburbs. And like, all of this has become a game for me that I love. And then you find the right property, and it's like, all right, well, I get to negotiate with a real estate agent. You call these agents and you know, trying to wheel and deal. They're trying to get you up. You're trying to get it down. And it's like, that becomes a game. And like, rather than becoming emotional about it or becoming, you know, overwhelmed about it, or just like looking at it as an opportunity to, you know, be good at this game that I like to play. And then once you've negotiated, you move into the admin, you know, settling on the property, talking to solicitors, talking to property managers, talking to insurance brokers, building and pest inspectors, town planners, maybe renovation specialists, handyman, like all of the limitless opportunities that you get to do at that point in time. And then it's like, you settle and it's done. It's like, oh, cool. Like, that was a hectic experience, but like, I got the outcome, and I've put the input in, and now I get the output. And then
there it is.
The beautiful thing from there is like, then you get to provide housing for another family that unfortunately is in a position to buy their own home yet.
I've rented for so long, man, like in the past. And I'm like,
30% of Australia always have, 30% of Australia always will.
If I lived in certain cities in Australia, I might still be a renter. Like, you know what I mean?
And if 100% of people owned, then we wouldn't have the market that we have as well.
Without a doubt. But it's an interesting thing hearing you say that, because you know, regardless of where you're landing into property, and this idea of like following passion is it's just a marketing dream. What you follow is like who you're born to be. What are you hearing that you keep hearing and keep ignoring? Every person listening to this is hearing it, because you are supposed to be, and I'm looking at the camera here, financially free. You are supposed to be living your best life. You're supposed to be helping the people around you. You're supposed to be healthy, well. You're supposed to have everything conspiring for you, like Charlie Rocket style. Like, it is not a fear game, this life. It's just, you've got to sit in fear, and you've got to sit in survival, and you've got to sit in hell on earth until you go, oh shit, it was never meant to be like this, and to suffer enough. This is my experience. You didn't maybe have to go through the same one, but some people just have to go through a whole bunch of shit to pop out the other side and go, well, it's either going to be a flower or it's going to be like a tyre running over this. So which way is it going? And it's like, it's taken me personally a long time, and I'm always going to be a work in progress, because I have light and dark in my personality. And so there's like, which wolf am I feeding is the one that wins in my self-type vibe. But it is incredible what you can do in 5 years. Like, any person listening to this can, through paying themselves first, learning about this stuff, and then making one smart decision in 5 years, completely give themselves financial peace in retirement. But if you want freedom, you can really get it quick. Like, I've talked to people at the moment that are like, yeah, like, we've bought 1 in 10 years. That's completely cool. That's actually like amazing. 1 in 10 years for 30 years, you'll be like the top 1% of Aussies. But like, some people come in, they're like, I was talking to Ben yesterday. We were looking at his like list. We did 5 of his 6 properties with him in a 9-month period. And he's just pulled out $3.6 million worth of equity to go. Now he's going balling. Like, he's like, I want to buy $13 million of industrial commercial stuff. And I'm like, I want to watch you do it, bro. Because that scares the shit out of me. But he's like, he's not thinking about him. He's thinking about being the dude that changes the family line, that passes on millions of, like, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of empire onto his family, and completely sets up every single person in his family line for 200 years. Like, there's just all sorts of ways that you can come into this, but in reality, it comes back to choices. It comes back to, is it going to be property? Is it going to be nothing? Or is it going to be stocks, crypto, commodities, business, whatever else?
I think people just need to like sit with themselves and like figure this stuff out. Like nobody's going to come to you and just hand you it on a silver platter. Like every single person that I've talked to has
I would love to have got a property handed to me debt free.
I know.
That would have been sweet.
But it's unrealistic. It's never going to happen. But it's like actually sit down. It's like I know we always go on a tangent away from like the property investment stuff, which is probably what a lot of people land on this
that's what our
this
short
stuff
format
for.
stuff's for too. Like check
But
out
like,
YouTube and Insta.
The reason that we talk about all this stuff is because this is the cake. Like this is what really matters. Like once you have sat down with yourself and you've realized, you know, what you want in life, what you're good at in life, what you're not so good at in life, what makes you fearful about life, because with awareness becomes like a strategy to overcome those things. And then you can move forward and do what needs to be done to start moving in the direction of the life that you were meant to have. But until you do that, you're going to be bombarded by media, by the opinions of insignificant people that don't want the best life for you. So it's like, you know, you really got to sit down and do the work and figure it out, like what you are good at, like what the world needs, how you can, you know, create a path to actually make that happen. And it can. And, you know, for some people it will take decades. And that's cool. We're going to live a long life.
Decades. Like I'm 15 years into it and still not there yet. So it's going to take me 20 years to achieve what I set out to achieve. 10 times longer than I thought it was going to take. But a long time ago, I realized it's the journey, not this destination. Like having 100 or 200 or 500 grand a year of passive income will not make anyone happy. Enjoying the like small things and the flow of life is what makes life like fruitful and amazing. So it's like, you know, I'm saying this to a mirror. I'm not saying this to you or anyone else here. Like I'm saying I'm the king of the shiny thing. I'm the king of the distraction. I'm the king of getting sucked into like a fear state, because in reality, we're all shit scared of everything because we've got a 100,000-year-old mind that is just everything's a threat. And so it's like, okay, that's cool. But what if I want to create? Like, what if I want to be a creator? What if I want to think abundantly? What if I want to journal, meditate, pray, train, sleep well, eat well, hang out with other people that are heading in the same direction as me? What if I could be financially free is a great question to ask. And what would that look like? Well, if you don't know, which no one does, a guy asked us yesterday on our call, how many people can answer that question of where they want to be in 15 years? And I said, none. Zero. I've talked to 4,000 or 5,000 investors in 10 years in this business. Zero clearly can articulate it. And the one person that can is that dude that's about to go buy $13 million more worth of property. It's because people that get where they want to be spend some time thinking about it. And it's like, I didn't know, and I couldn't tell you in 15 years where I want to be, but I know the direction, and the direction is financially free with $200,000 a year worth of passive income outside of my business. And how I achieve that is 4 houses that give me 50 grand each per year. So I've accumulated 3 of those 4 houses now. I need to accumulate 1 more. And for me, it's like, that's the next step. That's the only thing I'm focused on at the moment. Where am I going to accumulate that? In an undervalued market on the east coast of Australia. Which market? Townsville. And I'll talk about that more in the future. But it's like, it doesn't have to be this crazy big passion thing, perfect vision thing. It's like, if you're earning 100K should be your goal. How do you do that? 2 properties. Cool. How do you do that? Start with 1. How do you start with 1? Like, learn about the market.
People get so overwhelmed with like, how am I going to get from where I am today to where I want to be in 10, 15, 20, you name it, years. And, you know, you get bogged down in the details, but it's like, have an idea of where you want to go, and replacing your income is an amazing place to start, and then reverse engineer it back. And if you don't know how to reverse engineer it back, find a mentor or a coach or a team of advisors that can help you reverse engineer that. Somebody that has experience, somebody like an accountant, a financial advisor, a mortgage broker that's financially free, or a buyer's agent or a property investor like us that are on that journey to financial freedom, and like seek these things out. Like, you're not alone. You don't need to do all of this stuff by yourself. Like, the only reason that we've got to this amazing civilized world, well, some people may say that we're not so civilized at the moment, and I can agree with that, but you know, the only reason we've got here is through collaboration and communication. And I can guarantee the people that are there or on their way there want to share that information with you, because we want the rising tide to lift all ships. We've got an abundant mindset and truly believe there's enough out there for everybody to have what they want without too much greed. And it's just about figuring it out. And sometimes we do have, you know, too much of a broad view, and we're not super focused on exactly what we need. And just having that one person in your life that can shine a light or guide you down that right direction is all you need to like step into action. And then, you know, that quote from the richest man in Babylon, the goddess of luck will favor men of action. So, you know, you're not always going to have this perfectly clear plan as to exactly how it's going to work out. And even if you do, I can guarantee it'll change. But what you need to do is have an idea of where you want to be, reverse engineer it back to your next immediate action step, and take action.
You know, that Jack Canfield guy that was in The Secret that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul series, he said you don't, like, it's kind of like driving in the dark. It's like if you want to get from New York to California, that's a bad example because it'll take longer than a night to drive, but wherever from Sydney to Queensland, you don't have to see the entire trip. You just have to see 50 metres in front of you and where the light's shining and have the destination mapped out. And then things like a GPS helps, like things like having a car that's not going to break down helps. And I think it's important, like for those of you that are like really at the foundational phases, check out our video 2 Properties to Financial Freedom or 3 Properties to Financial Freedom, and it will show you how to buy, it'll show you how to pay off the debt, and then it will, you know, the third stage is up to you, like what you do with your life. And why property for me is less about the property and more what I can do with my life once I'm financially free. And what I can do is choose when I work and how I work, how I spend my time and who with, to choose to do things like, for me personally, like being financially free now to a point where like it's not gonna like ball out, but to cover my base living costs just takes so much pressure and fear away. Like I walk into this business now and I'm like, I'm so stoked to be here. I want to be here. I want to help people. And that's the only reason that I'm here, outside of like making some more money to buy more investments. But I'm like, it enables me to just feel okay in that bit of me that's like, you know, that we all carry around, like you weren't enough, or that, you know, it's fear, like all of this distractions that we hear coming in through like media or other people in our lives. And to me, it's like, well, it all goes to shit and I'm going to be okay. So it's like now that my view is not from starting, but financially free, it's like, who do I want to help? How do I want to help? What do I want to do with my time? And I think most people that get out of fear mindset and into a financially free position don't end up making stupid ass decisions. Because most of these people like me and you, like we didn't accumulate any of this. We had to build the knowledge, the skills, and go through the saving and the hardship. So it's like most likely when you get there, you're not just going to blow all your cash and be a dipshit and go drive like Lambos. And if that's what people want to do, that's cool. Like pick us up for a drive sometime. No, but I want to be in a position where it's like, all I really wanted was my time back. All I really wanted was to surf and train in the morning and hang with my kids. All I really wanted in the Arvos was to have a barbie with them and enjoy my life. It wasn't some big orchestrated picture to like have something that I wasn't already enjoying. It was just the choice to have it. And I think for me, the number one why is choices and freedom to help and to become the person that you were created to be. And it's like, my deepest fear personally is not fully expressing myself in this lifetime while I'm alive. And to me, that is so scary that I will like continue to put like the fear of playing small and not doing it is way more scary. And I know that that's like 90% of people would prefer to not change. Stepping out is actually more comfortable for me than like not becoming who I was supposed to be. And I want everyone to have that opportunity, and they are. We're already having this conversation and we all are doing it. But I just, for me personally, I think the more people that do that and lead their communities and the world and their kids, the better shit's going to be.
And it's changing. You know, the world is changing, and people are waking up a little bit more to this like self-actualization. Like, how do I actually reach self-actualization? And it's by doing the work and surrounding yourself with the right people and making smart decisions and going through some really, really tough times. And, you know, like, property's the vehicle that we've decided, and I'm sure everybody listening to this, property's the vehicle that they've chosen as well. And, you know, hopefully it's lit that fire or ignited that fire to sort of, you know, step into action and focus on that next thing in front of you at the moment. And, you know, for us, like, I've got so many amazing fun projects going on at the moment, and, you know, that could consider to be overwhelming. You know, I'm working, you know, basically full time. I've got an infant baby at home. My wife's off work, so we're only on a single income. I'm renovating my home. I'm about to start a duplex down in Brisbane.
You just went through a shit show of someone not paying you rent for 9 months, like,
exactly.
And all of the court stuff. Like, it's not always smooth sailing, guys.
It's really not. But, like, for me to have the choices that I feel as though I deserve, this is the price that I have to pay.
Yeah.
And so that's why I come back. Nobody's going to hand it to you. It's not going to be easy, but it's worth it at the end of the day. And it's like, I'm already living the life that I will be living when I'm financially free. You know, like, I'm already doing those things. So
that's
like,
just a cherry on top. It's just less stress.
It's just less stress, and it's to create that generational wealth. And as I said, I see this as a game. It's like, I've got this knowledge, I've got this capacity. Take advantage of it. Like, you know.
Well, are you in the arena or are you watching?
Exactly.
And the arena's like your life.
Yeah.
You know, that idea of self-actualization, I heard Jim Carrey talk about this recently. It's like, the self-actualization model is, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is so individually based. And it's like there's a pyramid, and you get to the top when you're self-actualized or enlightened or, you know, at peace with God, whatever the terminology that people want to use for themselves is. But my idea is, like, you invert the pyramid, and when you get to the top of self-actualization, then the start of the new pyramid, which expands out from there, is like us-actualization. Like, who can you help? And the whole new model is surrender and service.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sweet, I'm good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the other 8 billion people or 7 billion people are sweet. So, you know, each one teach one, like the Denzel Washington thing. Like, who can you pull up with you in your immediate community to help? Like, I want the choice to be like, well, Oprah says, my cup overflows. It's like a Jesus thing. It's like, okay, I've got enough. Like, now what?
Let's
Well,
give.
now what? I've got these skills too. Like, let's help people with them.
Yeah.
We're going to a charity day on Friday, Lisa and I, and like, we're going to give, like, dairy stuff from this year that our business has been paid in referrals for the property, for the mortgage broking off for him. And, like, when I sold my last property, I said I'm going to give $10,000 of what I made from that to the charity and a little bit more myself. And then you and I are personally giving $500 every week from the business as well. It'll end up being like almost 50 grand this year that we've given to a charity on the coast. Like, when I think why property, like, that's why.
Helping those people that aren't in the position to be able to be here yet.
You and I both lived off 20 grand a year for like 4 years. Like,
less.
We're giving that away.
I remember I used to pay myself $250 for, like, I reckon 8 years going through uni, and my first couple of years, like, working full time as well. Like, and I still had a sick time.
Best time.
You know,
like those times at the bottom's the bomb.
Yeah. But it's just, I don't know, like, property to me is what's given me the lifestyle of my dreams, you know, and I'm living it way earlier than I ever expected, and I've already exceeded my expectations as a teenager, as somebody in his early 20s, and it's just like, I live with that.
I love that
thought of, like, gratitude. Like, I'm already living a better life than I could have ever imagined for myself, and it's just like, how can I surround myself with people that want this as well, and, like, what can I do for them to make that journey a little bit easier? And it's like, you know, you've gone through some shit for this, and it's like, everyone has to go through something. It doesn't always have to be that hectic,
win every
though.
Game.
Yeah,
like, but it's just like sport or a game.
It doesn't have to be that hectic either. Like, you can just become a little bit more accepting fact that like suffering is inevitable.
Yeah.
Get used to it, or it's going to be a really, really, really overwhelming
Embrace it. It's just part of it.
Embrace it and just go like, what is this teaching me? Like, what is this giving me? Because, you know, life has a funny way of like teaching you lessons.
Well, it's continuing to teach you until you get that thing. And then it teaches you the next one
And
so
then
that
it
you can
changes.
keep growing again.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love it, man. Like, I'm really grateful to be able to have these convos with you so openly, and you know, the thanks, Mum, for continuing to this point in the podcast. And anybody else that's still listening as well. Like, we love you guys, and we're trying to put as much good property related stuff / this is just us documenting our own journey on the way to like figuring this shit out. And like, I'm such a work in progress and so far away from who I was created to be, but that's the fun of it too.
There's no destination for either of us. It's just, you know, going through it day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, and enjoying the ride while we can, knowing that it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but, you know, the times when it's dark and stormy, it's, you know, there's so much more to learn at that stage of your life than when it is sunshine and rainbows. You know, like when you're going through it, working those big weeks and, you know, struggling because something's going on, like you're learning more about yourself in that moment than when you're on a holiday.
I love it, man. I'm super grateful. That went on the biggest tangent. That was not where I was expecting this convo to go at all, to be honest.
Look, the first 20, 30 minutes were good. We were like, yes, that's what we needed to hit. And then it's just like, boom, change direction.
I feel like I'm at Skate Plus with my rollerblades on back in the day.
Yeah, just going back against the crowd.
No, I love it, bro. I'm so grateful for everything, and I'm excited to see this new phase for you as well as a dad. Your first duplex coming up as well.
Yep.
Just sold this property. I'm excited to see the reno you're doing at the home. You are juggling a few things at the moment, eh?
Yeah, it is. I'm going through it at the moment, but it's the right time to be doing what I'm doing right now. So it's not going to be forever. There is a good season coming up in probably 4 or 5 years where I'll be able to kick back. But it's like right now I need to put the work in, put the effort in, and I will be rewarded for that at the end of the day.
Love that,
I know
bro.
I will.
Awesome, man.
Thanks, bro.
If you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 6 months, then the team and I at Pumped On Property would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. To book the session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that free strategy session button. Now, in the session, we'll talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and educate you deeply on the Australian property market. You can then take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each month. Either way, we look forward to continuing to help you build your property portfolio with confidence on your journey to financial freedom.